direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Friday, June 15th, 2018. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. And, of course, this being Friday, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us in hour number 3. So let's get right on into it. We've now had a day to basically look at that Inspector General report regarding the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. And as I mentioned yesterday, when it was coming on out, and already the corporate media was trying to spin it and to say, no, it's not all that bad. They wanted to control the narrative because, after all, the actual IG report is 500 pages, and who wants to wade through that? As it turns out, quite a lot of people are doing just that, and we're going to have more about that in a little bit. But the corporate media narrative is that while James Comey definitely acted way out of line with normal investigative procedure and FBI rules and so forth, that there was no political bias. That's what the corporate media is saying, that the IG report says there was no political bias. That is very misleading, because what the IG report actually says is they couldn't document any instance where political bias was having an impact on the investigation. That doesn't mean that it wasn't taking place. It's just they couldn't find a scrap of paper that had something on it that said, because of the political ramifications of thus and such, we're going to go over here. So again, there was political bias. Even the IG report says there definitely was animus toward President Trump. There was no question about that. But what the IG report says is there's no paper trail proving they acted on the bias that the IG report says did exist. The corporate media is saying, no, there was no political bias. So once again, you can't trust anything coming out of the corporate media these days. They're still trying to cover for Hillary and the liberals. So now, one of the interesting aspects here is that the emails, the FBI emails, wreck the official timeline of the Clinton investigation, because it confirms something that we had known a long time ago, that the decision to make sure that Hillary escaped from all of this was made long before she was even interviewed. And Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch is out there saying, yes, absolutely, Comey decided or was told long ahead to let Hillary off. I don't think it was his decision. I think he was ordered, or he's blackmailed, or he was threatened. Now, as you know, Democrats have long complained that James Comey's reopening of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails in late October 2016 is what cost them the presidential election. But the report of the Department of Justice Inspector General shows the FBI may actually have neglected an investigation into the emails found on Anthony Weiner's laptop in an effort to stop Donald Trump from winning. The reason Comey reopened the investigation is he was being forced by prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. And apparently the FBI, working with the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, knew as early as September 26th that his laptop had hundreds of thousands of emails, many of which were Clinton-related or State Department domains. And they informed the FBI in D.C. Nobody did anything. And the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York said, we're going to go public on this, and that's what forced Comey's hand. So they had the laptop, they had the emails that were on there, they didn't do anything with them. They were still pushing for Hillary Clinton to win. Now here's where the giveaway, that the fix was in right from the very, very beginning. The IG report is showing that even though there was an investigation into the handling of classified email, Hillary Clinton herself was never designated as a subject. In other words, it was never an investigation of Hillary Clinton. It was just an investigation of the email server and email procedures, as it were. This was a cover-up right from the beginning. Now, Donald Trump has finally broken silence on this. He's got the high ground right now, and he should take advantage of it. And he's out there saying Comey's conduct was criminal, and he was the ringleader of these obviously misbehaving FBI agents. And he says it'll be up to a court of law as to whether he goes to jail. But what he did was horrible in terms of the Constitution and the well-being of the country. I absolutely agree on that. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And something else Trump is saying is that if it gets any worse, if the scandal gets any worse, he may step in directly and get involved, meaning he's going to start firing people at the Department of Justice. And like I said, this IG report, while they're still protecting the real motivations and what was going on with Hillary's email server, it gives Donald Trump the ammunition. He's got the high ground. He should take advantage of it. If he ever had an opportunity to clean the swamp, even the corporate media is going to have a hard time protecting James Comey for behaving as badly as he did. He did behave badly. The IG report absolutely exonerates President Trump, that he was perfectly justified in firing James Comey. James Comey was not doing his job correctly. So, now, a lot of people are pointing out that this report undermines the basis for the Robert Mueller investigation because part of what Mueller's special counsel was put together was to investigate obstruction of justice in the firing of James Comey. Well, that's gone. The IG report said Comey was just not doing his job. He was incompetent at best, corrupt at worst, and Trump was fully justified in firing him on the merits of his job performance only. So that part of Mueller's mandate, if you will, is now gone. And there's a lot more coming out of this IG report. And again, we were all hoping it was going to get back to the issue of espionage, but they didn't. But there's a lot of other stuff in there. Apparently, they found an FBI lawyer told a Bureau employee, "Viva la resistance," right after President Trump was elected. Yes, there obviously was bias. The IG report is saying there was a lot of bias. All they really said is they couldn't document that that bias influenced anybody, although looking from the outside, it certainly looks like it did. All this investigative effort on Donald Trump, they're still ignoring Hillary Clinton's pay for play. They're ignoring the fact that the Clinton Foundation doesn't actually qualify to be a 501c3. And they're ignoring the indications that Hillary Clinton may have been running an espionage operation out of the State Department at the same time the Awan brothers were running what appears to be an espionage operation out of the United States Congress. And at the very least, was it two separate espionage operations that somehow got past the FBI, or was it just one? Now, as we mentioned yesterday, it's also come on out that FBI employees who were leaking to the media were getting all kinds of gifts for it. They were getting tickets to sporting events, golfing outings, drinks, meals, admittance to non-public social events. The FBI was leaking like a colander. And again, something we mentioned yesterday, but in light of my concerns about espionage, they're again saying foreign actors did access the Hillary Clinton emails. Remember when Guccifer was logged into Hillary Clinton's private email server, he reported seeing 10 other foreign IPs logged in as well, going through the documents there. Something else that came out of the IG report, apparently FBI agents discovered that Huma Abedin was deleting classified Hillary Clinton emails from her Yahoo account, but even after that, failed to subpoena her devices. Remember, the only reason the Anthony Weiner laptop went into play is the New York police grabbed it in association with Anthony Weiner's sexting crimes. The FBI wasn't looking for it. Didn't want to see anything that might get away from that preordained conclusion that Hillary was innocent. Remember, the NSA claims they've had all the emails all this time, including the missing 33,000. They offered them to James Comey. He said he wasn't interested. Something else that came out of the IG report is that when Comey was rewriting his little report on his investigation into the Hillary email server, he changed Obama to simply another senior government official. It's protecting Obama there. And deleted completely the reference that Hillary emailed Obama while in the territory of a foreign adversary. Now, if that isn't a cover-up, then what is? Lisa Page, one of her texts came on out, said there was a ton of retired intelligence agents demanded to know why Hillary wasn't indicted. I'm one of them. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Don in the Philippines, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I got a couple points, Mike. For one thing, this IG report, it looks this point that was made that, you know, as you pointed out, the whole thing is nothing but bias. It shows 1,000 different examples of bias, and yet
Yes.
It says there is no political bias. The statement that they cannot find any documentary or whatever. I don't know exactly how it was worded.
Well,
But
see,
to me,
the
that
wording
looks
is
like-
important. The wording is important because what the media is saying, there was no political bias. What the IG report says is, yes, there was bias, but we couldn't document a case where it actually impacted the investigation.
Okay. But even that, they said they could not document it. It appears to me like this is one of those points where, remember, for a couple weeks that it was said that before he was going to release, there was a delay in him releasing it. And they were saying it's because probably Sessions and Rosenstein were trying to argue with him about parts of it. So I think maybe that had something to do with it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was softened from its original version. In fact, there's already a White House petition up demanding the original version pre-doctoring. Because you're right.
That would be good.
Horowitz was under tremendous pressure to soften it in order to protect the image of the FBI and the Department of Justice. Well, I got a news flash for you people. Right now, the public image of the FBI and the Department of Justice is mud.
Yeah. But one other completely different point I would like to make on these, I watch these snippets sometimes on Fox News on YouTube, and let's say they'll have some guy talking like one of the, let's say for example, they'll have Trey Gowdy or Jim, one of these congressmen who will be talking to about how nasty and dirty and crooked, for example, Comey is. Now,
Yes.
at the same time, there'll be a split screen, and they'll show Comey walking around there looking. They'll show him looking at his best. They won't show him when he's looking really stupid. Or, for example, Rosenstein. If it's Rosenstein, they'll show him. It's hard to make Rosenstein look good, but
Yes.
at certain times, like when he's they'll show him taking the podium, looking at his very best. So the viewer that doesn't know the whole story, it appears that this guy, the congressman, is just complaining, whereas this other guy is above the fray and he's walking around totally calm, cool, collected, in control, and he's the boss of the situation, which isn't far from the truth, really. So that's all I wanted to say about it. I'll let you go, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. But again, that's the job of the corporate media, to keep spinning things for the power elite. And right now, even though Donald Trump is in the White House and the Republicans have a thin majority in Congress, that liberal democratic narcocracy is still the power. And right now, they are very much afraid. Because at some point, somebody who's getting outed and referred for prosecution is going to start talking and making a deal. And if if this whole can of worms gets ripped open, the U.S. federal government is simply not going to survive it. It's kind of ironic that tomorrow is the anniversary of the Watergate break-in, because this scandal that we're seeing start to reveal itself right now goes way beyond Watergate. And we have to keep digging, and we have to keep up the pressure. And I'm sure that a lot of people are hoping that we'll take the IG report and say, see, we've admitted some wrongs, and now this is all over and done with. It's in the past and it's history. No, it isn't. This is just a first step. This was a limited hangout, but there's enough meat in this limited hangout for us to say there's more out there, and we have to keep going. Now, one of the things that the FBI did do when they were investigating Hillary's email server is they investigated the IT guy who was running it. And we're not talking Imran Awan, we're talking a separate individual. And basically the FBI agents, after the interview, just said, yeah, the guy was lying his rear end off. Here's basically the quotes coming from the report. Agent 1 had just interviewed Hillary's personal IT guy. The agent then had this exchange with a fellow FBI employee. FBI employee, boom, how did the witness go? Agent 1, awesome, lied his rear end off, went from never inside the sensitive compartmented information facility at residence to looked in when it was being constructed, to remove the trash twice, to troubleshoot the secure fax with Hillary Rodham Clinton a couple of times, to every time there was a secure fax, I did it with. In other words, they knew the guy was lying, but they didn't do anything about it. Now, everybody now knows about Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, who were having a romantic affair while being married to other people. And they were texting back and forth with each other, clearly displaying their anti-Trump bias.
You pull up.
I'm sorry, where did that come from?
Hello?
Hello, who's on the line?
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike. This is.
Okay, I think we're having an issue with.
Are you there?
Okay, Dave in Missouri. Yeah, what's on your mind?
Hey, brother, I just wanted to kind of, to me, this whole thing with this IG report, I'm glad you started with that. I was pretty mad about it yesterday. I still am. It's hard to find a good side to this. To me, what it looks like is this is the new 9/11 report or the Warren Commission report, where they try to sweep everything from Travelgate and cattle futures all the way through Vince Foster to the email, all in one big box, put a lid on it, put the IG report on the front of it. That's the official story. And if you have any more questions about any recent history you might recall, or anything that you know to be true, well, you're a cracked out conspiracy theorist and we have to protect people from you because we have the official story, and you must be crazy if you still want to persist down this road of trying to find criminality in the Clintons' life of crime. So to me, that's what this is. It's the new, and that's my concern, is they're just going to use it to further silence people like you because, Mike, we have to protect people from you. You're clearly crazy. You can't be allowed to spread your seed. It might grow. So, I mean, of course, seed doesn't grow. That's conspiracy theory too. But you know what I'm saying? This is the new, it's their whitewash, their cover story. It's going to be the official story. And if you deviate or have further questions, why, proof you're cracked out and we got to get you off the air to protect people from you.
Okay,
and,
well, Dave,
that's just my thought on that.
Dave, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and I'll respond on air after the commercial break.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Welcome to What Really Happened Radio. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. And now, set your eyes on the future and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, there is no question that this Inspector General report is very limited in scope. It doesn't purport to explain away everything. It's an investigation into an investigation, and it's a limited hangout. A lot of what is in that report is stuff that we in the independent media ferreted out and reported on going back over the last couple of months. Everything behind that is opaque. But the difference is we know it going right on in. Now, going on back to the Warren report, it took something like 30 years to reach the point where half of the American people understood there was a cover-up and a whitewash. Those days are gone. In the age of the internet and the independent media, the life cycle of a government cover-up can be clocked with an egg timer. So let's just turn that over. We'll get that one running right now. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to see the usual thing that anybody who thinks there's anything more behind the email investigation, like me, I think there's a question of espionage. We're going to be denounced as kooks and crackpots and tinfoil hat wearers. But, after all this time, it's like being called an anti-Semite. They've overused it. It's burned out. It doesn't work anymore. Let's take another phone call here. Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. You're certainly right that there's almost nothing here new at all that alternative media, the free media, hasn't already figured out that you haven't talked about many times. And as a matter of fact, they could go a lot further and still not catch up with what you guys have been reporting for a while. But I just wanted to draw a couple of dots and connect some lines to it. Remember, it's patently obvious, Mike, just how much corruption is going on and how much everybody in government is susceptible to blackmail. I mean, if anything has come out of it, it's that almost all these guys are dirty and have something to hide.
Yes.
And so, Mike, you look back and I know you've been reporting it since the turn of the century, where the Israelis have had access through, those telecommunications things, and then with that Obama agreement to all the intercepts. We look back at for instance, Jack Abramoff, who was the super lobbyist and Israeli firster.
Yes.
He, by the way, supplied sniper rifles to the settlers, among other things. But he was passing along bribes and improper payments to everybody and passing that on to the Mossad. Then we have Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is in charge of this Democratic spy situation, or whatever it was for Hillary Clinton. Now they're already getting all the intercepts. And let me give you one more. I have a nephew who early in the Bush administration was the principal staffer or a principal staffer to the House Administration Committee. And I remember him telling me back then, I remember I told you back then, that they were circulating, there was a bid for congressional cell phones. The cell phones given to all the Congress members, and it was a one bid thing, one bidder. It was an Israeli company, and they supplied all the cell phones to all the congressmen. That's just to add on to what we already know. But at any rate, and that's 15 years ago now. So we have all this stuff going on, and now we have an idea, along with the press, with the Jeff Bezos, with George Soros. I think somebody brought up yesterday, I think Mark did, about him buying a major portion of the New York Times, with what's his name, Bloomberg, having his own communications network, and all this stuff that's also basically dominated by Israeli firsters. And the total corruption within our government, and the fact that they have it all. They have every bit of it. And then even with the thing with Manafort, Kelly, when Kelly was, charged with, colluding with the Russians, it was all about Israel. He was doing work on behalf of Israel, not the United States. And so that's just another aspect. But they're like ticks. They brewed into every nook and cranny of the body politic and corrupted every bit of it.
Yes. Well, I mean, it does seem like the entire swamp inside the Beltway is just this cross-connected Gordian knot of mutual blackmail and threats. And I've known people who sort of tangentially started to get involved in politics, and they were so disgusted by what they saw that they turned away. It's not a place for good, decent people. There have been a few exceptions like Cynthia McKinney and Ron Paul. But overall, Washington, D.C. has become a place that attracts people who are extremely greedy, power-hungry, and sociopathic. And as a result, as Aaron Russo used to say on his documentaries, your average congressman would sell their own mother for $1. And that's absolutely true. And I got to tell you, that idea that Israel is supplying congressional cell phones, what idiot thought that was a way to guard the security of our congressional communications? I mean, that really is dumb. Anyway, listen, Peter, we got to let you go. We got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just track yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. So getting on back to what's coming out from the IG report. As you know, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were having a romantic relationship, even though they were both married to other people at the time. And they traded all these texts back and forth that show a very pronounced anti-Trump bias. And it turns out there was another pair of FBI staffers who were also having a romantic / sexual relationship who have not been identified other than by the names Agent 1 and Agent 5. They were also involved in the Clinton investigation. And they were in a relationship at the time. Now, in their case, they've since become married, which is just fine. But here's the point. We have these 4 agents who were involved in the Clinton email investigation who are basically Hillary groupies. And apparently at one point, 4 months before the election, one of the 4 FBI case agents working on the investigation addressed her as the president. Now that, I think, definitely indicates there was a bias. And when you have such a very obvious bias going on, it's impossible to say it wasn't influencing their behavior. And I know the IG report was saying they couldn't document where it did, but at this point, it's impossible to not see the bias in both the Department of Justice and the FBI. No investigation of pay for play, no investigation of Uranium One, no investigation of possible espionage involving that email server. And by the way, let's get on back to that. If there's one thing that comes out of this Inspector General's report, it's that the investigation into the Hillary Clinton's private email server was handled completely inappropriately and improperly. So that means we haven't had a real investigation of what could be a very serious national security issue. So we all need to stand up and demand a full, honest, verifiable investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server and whether or not it was being used for espionage purposes. And I keep saying, let's get Larry Klayman up here. He wants the job. If you go down to the Freedom Watch website, you know, he's out there waving flags. He wants to get in. He's tanned, rested, and ready. He's just, you know, eager to just dig on in there. Apparently, something else that came out of the Inspector General report, apparently Andrew McCabe is being investigated by the Office of U.S. Counsel for possible violation of the Hatch Act. Now, the Hatch Act prohibits FBI agents from campaigning in partisan races. And this may be a problem because McCabe campaigned for his wife and was photographed with her and obviously supporting her. And it's a situation that probably the original drafters of the Hatch Act didn't conceive of. But it is an issue. All right, so I'm sure that there's going to be more coming out of the IG report, and it is going to get worse. And as I said before, Trump right now has the high ground. He has the high ground in the minds of America. He's never going to have the high ground in the media, but he's got some wiggle room. And if he's serious about draining the swamp, now is the time to do it, because he's been vindicated on his decision to fire James Comey. James Comey was clearly not doing the job the FBI director was supposed to be doing. It says it right in the report. He was insubordinate. Insubordination is grounds for termination. So Trump is in the clear on that issue. There was no obstruction of justice, and he needs to seize the moment. He needs to seize the initiative here. He needs to put on his presidential brass knuckles. He's only got 2.5 years left until his next election. And if he's going to stand a chance at re-election, he's got to get moving on delivering a lot of what he promised in that campaign, including cleaning up the swamp, draining the swamp, or droning the swamp might be easier, and putting Hillary Clinton and her cohorts in jail. All right, let's talk about the war zones now. A lot of stuff going on. Apparently, down in Syria, Russia and Turkey have reached an agreement on Tel Rifat and it's in the province of Aleppo. And under the agreement, units of the Turkish military will be deployed to Tel Rifat side by side with the Russian military police who are already there. The Syrian Arab Army and the Kurdish People Protection Units will withdraw from the town. Members of the Turkish-backed militant groups will not be allowed to enter the area. This is aimed at de-escalating the situation and allowing civilians to return to their homes in the town. Now, as you know, the other day, Saudi Arabia was doing bad things to the people of Yemen, and they bombed a just completed medical facility specifically designed to treat cholera, because Yemen is in the middle of the worst cholera outbreak pretty much in all of history. Millions of people infected. And it's easy to prevent if your infrastructure isn't bombed into rubble. But Doctors Without Borders came on down and they built this facility. It was just completed. It had the appropriate signs painted on the roof, including the Red Crescent and identification. This is a medical facility, and the Saudis bombed it. This prompted outrage around the world, as well it should. The perception was that the Saudis want the people of Yemen to suffer from cholera, want the disease to spread. Maybe the Saudis dropped it on the Yemenites in the first place. It wouldn't be the first time cholera was used as a biological weapon. Now, Saudi Arabia is trying to come back from that by claiming it was all the fault of Doctors Without Borders because they did not send in the proper notification. And Saudis came out with what they claimed was a fax from Doctors Without Border saying it was our mistake because we didn't update the coordinates per standard procedures. Now, Doctors Without Borders is saying this is an utter and complete fabrication. Doctors Without Borders gave the Saudi coalition the GPS coordinates for the cholera treatment center at least 12 times in writing during its construction. And the Saudi-led coalition acknowledged receipt of those coordinates in writing 9 times. So the Saudis intended to blow that facility up. They intended to increase the suffering on the civilians of Yemen, and that is a crime against humanity. Up in Ukraine, things are getting very, very tense. We reported yesterday a lot of armor is heading from Kiev toward the eastern republics. Zakharenko is now calling up the Donetsk reserves. Donbass is gearing up for a full-scale Kiev offensive. They don't know when it's going to start, but it's going to start soon. Now, remember, there was a report that Kiev is going to justify this with a false flag attack that will kill a European Union commission supposedly touring the eastern Ukrainian republics to assess the humanitarian situation. So it may start with that. But everybody's just ready to go to war. You know, gosh darn it, we've worked hard for this world war. Let's just get it on already. Down in Turkey, Erdogan is hoping to engage in joint production of the S-500 air defense missile with Russia, even as the S-400 is still being delivered. And it appears that the threat on sanctions for not buying the U.S. weapons did not work. I think Turkey, and indeed much of the rest of the world, is getting tired of the U.S. bullying. Do what we say or bad things will happen here. So let's get on down to Gaza, because those Gazan protesters are still at that fence. They're protesting for the right of return guaranteed to them by the United Nations and promised by Israel as a condition of Israel's membership in the United Nations. But as with many other promises made by Israel, it has been broken. So Israeli forces are continuing to use lethal force against Palestinian civilians who are just engaged in peaceful demonstrations. Apparently, the Israeli forces killed 4 civilians, including a child, and wounded 287 Palestinian civilians, including 43 children, 9 women, 3 journalists, and 4 paramedics. 8 of the wounded are in serious condition. In the West Bank, Israeli forces wounded an Israeli human rights defender and 9 Palestinian civilians, including a child. One of those wounded sustained serious wounds. Now, Israel is once again trying to shift the blame and say that the reason they're having to shoot the Gazans on the fence is they're aware of a massive plot to send incendiary kites and incendiary helium balloons, hundreds and hundreds of them, into Israel to try and burn up the country. That's the reason that they cut down or that's the reason they claim they cut the supplies of helium to the Gaza hospitals. And yes, unfortunately, there have been a few of these kites, but who knows? Those may be done by agent provocateurs to give Israel that talking point. But overwhelmingly, the vast number of those people at that fence are not engaging in violence, and they're still being gunned down. Israel, I guess, is tired of the bad press, and Israel's Ministerial Committee for Legislation is expected to approve a draft bill this weekend that aims to ban the documentation of Israeli soldiers' maltreatment of Palestinians by human rights groups. The legislation will prohibit the documentation and distribution of any report about confrontations between Israeli soldiers and Palestinians with the intent either to harm national security or break the spirit of Israeli soldiers and inhabitants. This law was proposed by member of the Knesset Robert Ilitov of Israel Betenu, and it enjoys support from faction head Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman and the Kulanu Party, headed by the Finance Minister Moshe Kalon. In other words, they're trying to basically cut Gaza off from the rest of the world by saying, human rights groups, if you dare take a video or a photo and put it out on the web, you are going to jail. And the prison sentences in this law range between 5 and 10 years. Now that's dictatorship right there on the face of it. When you shut down the right of the media or anybody to report factually on what's going on, you have entered into dictatorship. So don't you ever bother me by saying we have to support Israel because it's the only democracy in the Middle East. Not anymore. Now, as you know, over at the United Nations, Israel, and by extension the United States, have been taking a real beating after that General Council vote. And the U.S. via Nikki Haley is still trying to act like the aggrieved party. How dare you? How dare you dare to dare to dare to dare? And now the United States is apparently considering pulling out of the United Nations Human Rights Council because the United Nations Human Rights Council keeps on insisting that Israel is violating the human rights of the Palestinians. And you can't say that. You're not allowed to say that. They can't say that, can they? Well, we're just going to take our ambassador and we're going to go home. Okay. Now, I'm not the only one who has caught the fact that the New York Slimes is just spinning as hard as they can in favor of Israel over what's going on with Gaza. They're spinning so hard, I'm wondering how it is they're able to keep their lunch down. But apparently what the New York Slimes did basically is they embedded a reporter with the snipers. And all they're doing is they're echoing whatever the Israeli military is saying. That's it. They haven't sent anybody into Gaza to get the other side of the story. It is just completely one-sided. Now, over at Human Rights Watch, they've come up with a really good idea. They're responding to the fact that the Security Council can't do anything about what's going on in Israel because of Nikki Haley's vetoes. They're aware that the General Council, the General Assembly vote rather, is symbolic and carries no real teeth. They're basically looking at the fact that the United States will continue to protect and enable Israel while Israel continues to commit these atrocities. And they're also aware of the attempts to block Palestine from going to the International Criminal Courts. So Human Rights Watch has said, there's a better idea. Start sanctioning Israel's leaders who are responsible for all of this. And according to Sarah Lee Whitson, who's the Human Rights Watch Middle East director, she says the international community needs to rip up the old playbook where Israel investigates itself and the U.S. blocks accountability with its UN Security Council veto. And Whitson says the world must begin to impose real costs on Israel for its blatant disregard for Palestinian lives. In other words, she's saying that boycott, divestment, and sanction has to go on steroids. It has to be on steroids to basically make the point. Because if it's one thing the Israelis do love, it is their money, and sanctions will hurt, or they wouldn't be whining and screaming so much about boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Here in the United States, there is a war on freedom of speech, especially on our college campuses. And in the name of fighting anti-Semitism, there are literally an army of pro-Israel watchdog organizations that attack any college personnel, academics, who are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. And they'll try and get tenure revoked. They'll try and get them fired. They'll try and wreck their careers. And they claim they're doing this to basically address with anti-Jewish actions taking place on the campus. But actual statistics are showing there haven't really been any anti-Jewish actions on those campuses. In fact, the few that have happened turned out to be caused by the pro-Israel groups themselves, because they were saying, we need some anti-Semitism to pound on. And we've seen that back through the last couple of years about these, anti-Semitic hate crime hoaxes. That's a very, very real situation. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break. We'll be right back with more news after these few words.
Hi folks, CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid-150s over the 80s to the mid-130s over mid-80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, I mean the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay. Unemployment getting worse.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm looking at the story that's coming on the Fox channel right now. Apparently, there is this school that decided to stop naming a class valedictorian because it made the dullards and underachievers feel left out. And we have to just be so careful about their feelings. And the gist of the story is that the father of the young man who would have been the valedictorian went out and bought him a billboard to basically celebrate, you're our valedictorian. Whatever happened to the idea of encouraging young people to excel, to be smarter, to be the valedictorian? And all of a sudden, we seem to have an educational system that is trivializing academic accomplishment. Anyway, back to the news here. Little story that's coming on out of Russia Today, reminding us that the biggest obstacle to Trump dealing with North Korea is his political foes back at home. That's absolutely true. Trump right now is surrounded by a lot of people, including Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, who didn't want the summit to work, don't want an agreement to be reached. They want that war. They think it's going to be fun because there's nothing decent on TV, so let's have a war. It'll be entertaining. Meanwhile, this is a very, very bizarre story. It's out of Sputnik News. Somebody leaked a classified Israeli Foreign Ministry report suggesting that Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un's meeting in Singapore was little more than a glorified photo opportunity in which the U.S. retreated from its positions. Now, that may be accurate. It was a photo op, especially for Kim Jong-un. Yes, the U.S. is talking about calling off those military drills. And time will tell if Kim Jong-un is going to denuclearize. But the reason I said this is an odd story is because we know that Netanyahu very much wants the North Korean summit to work because that frees up military resources for the United States to go after Iran, which is what he wants. I'm sure Netanyahu at some point in the past called up Donald Trump and said, stop making a fuss about North Korea. Your job is Iran. And sure enough, North Korea is now on the back burner, and they're talking about going into Iran. So apparently, a Democratic New York lawmaker named of Higgins is the latest Democrat to pull support for Nancy Pelosi, describing her as aloof, frenetic, and misguided. And Higgins explained that his lack of support comes from a lack of a clear Democratic agenda, that's certainly true, and lack of interest in his bills to invest in infrastructure and to expand Medicare. So it looks like the old guard is definitely very much in trouble here. Interestingly enough, Democrats are saying that it's time for Obama to return from the sidelines and take up a central figurehead position within the Democratic Party, which definitely indicates Clinton fatigue. They can't find anybody better. He is now considered the patriarch of the Democratic Party. All right, there's the music. We're going to take a station identification break, and we'll be right back after these few words.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AROutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go right to the phones to Steve Elkins. Steve, aloha. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, this last summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but the sanctions will continue until 2020. Is that correct?
Well, in theory, yes, that's what's being proposed. But again, senior diplomats on both sides are supposed to meet to discuss an implementation. And the idea being that sanctions will gradually be reduced as more and more of the nuclear arsenal is destroyed and verified. But those are details that have yet to be worked out.
Yeah. Well, I know earlier they were tacking on more things, and then I guess not Israel, but Kim Jong-un, North Korea, was unallowed to pursue any kind of defensive ballistic missiles also. Is that still on the table, or is it just denuclearization?
It's just denuclearization, but I'm sure that as part of an effort to wreck the deal, Pompeo and Bolton are probably going to say the long-range ballistic missiles have to go as well. I don't know why they're worried. They do tend to blow up a lot coming off the launch pad.
I agree. That's it, Michael. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Okay, so as you probably saw earlier today, the judge in the Paul Manafort case has rescinded house arrest and sent Paul Manafort to jail. And I think this was done today specifically to try and draw the public and media focus away from the IG report. Not going to work. No way, no how. Meanwhile, Rosenstein, rented lips, may be in a little bit of hot water because apparently back in January of this year, when Rosenstein was having a meeting with the House Intelligence Committee, at one point he literally threatened to subpoena emails, phone records, and other documents from lawmakers and staff on the House committee. And the members of the House committee came out of that feeling like they had been threatened, that Rosenstein literally threatened them. And that's just now coming out as part of the IG report. Jim Jordan is out there saying that Rod Rosenstein has to resign immediately for that kind of thuggish behavior. Because Congress has oversight responsibility over the Department of Justice, and for that matter, the FBI. And for Rosenstein to be threatening the House Intelligence Committee is completely inappropriate. Now, while James Comey and the FBI may have declined to really talk all that much with Hillary Clinton, in the end, there was one interview at her home, not under oath. And then, of course, the IG investigation wanted to talk to her. She refused. But Judicial Watch is still moving ahead. And apparently, the court has ordered a hearing for October 11th of this year on a motion to compel testimony about the email practices of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. This order was issued by U.S. District Court Judge Emmett G. Sullivan, who appears to be one of the good guys. Now, this is, once again, a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit about the employment status of Huma Abedin, who was the former Deputy Chief of Staff to Clinton. The lawsuit seeks records regarding the authorization for Abedin to engage in outside employment while employed by the Department of State, and was reopened because of revelations about the ClintonEmail.com system. So these are dragging on a little bit. All right, back to the phones. Randy in Ontario, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing okay.
I'm great. This has to be vetted. I've heard about this Pope Francis being arrested through Interpol for trial trafficking. Again, it's got to be vetted. I've just been hearing this all day long from different sources about Pope Francis has been arrested by Interpol for child trafficking. Have you heard anything about this?
No, I have not heard anything about it at all.
Okay.
And no, there's nothing there. There's a humor satirical website called Arrest the Pope. But I think it would be almost impossible for somebody to do because the Vatican is a sovereign state. And Interpol would have no authority there.
I understand he can't be arrested anywhere for anything because of his position, is what one of my sources told me.
Well, this appears to be more fake news.
Well, if it was true, it would never hit mainstream media anyway.
Well, I'm not seeing anything to indicate it, so I would say this: somebody's putting this out here to make the independent media look silly. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. As you know, Barack Obama is getting ready to get his presidential library all set up. There's already been a big stink about it because it was originally supposed to be in Chicago, and they grabbed a chunk of a public park for the library. Then all of a sudden it turned out the library itself is going to be somewhere else, and there's going to be basically a monument to his Obamaness at the Chicago site, which has angered a lot of the people. They were willing to lose part of the public park for a presidential library, but not for this self-aggrandizement here. But they're already running into a bit of a problem because obviously there's this task of transferring the records into the National Archives. And the archivist in charge, David Ferriero, has hit a problem. A lot of key records are missing. Now, Ferriero has been driving a much-needed digital overhaul and expansion of the National Archives over the 9 years of his appointment to allow records to be searched much more efficiently and remotely, as well as access to the files themselves. But he's finding that a lot of key Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton files are nowhere to be found. That rates a and it should be remembered that all of those files do not belong to Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton. They belong to the American people. all work product by all of these people, FBI, Department of Justice, whatever, belongs to the American people. And there are very strict rules about how it's to be handled and how it's to be protected. Representative Trey Gowdy is out there once again saying it's time for a second special counsel looking into what's been going on in the Department of Justice and the FBI. And he's absolutely right. We're way overdue on this one. So getting on back to Robert Mueller, he's having a really, really bad week, besides the revelations in the IG report. As you know, to try and make it look like he was on the trail of collusion between Trump and Russia, he issued a bunch of indictments for these Russian companies he claimed operated a propaganda troll farm, posting online materials to help Donald Trump. And he sat back with this idea that the accusation and the indictment would be fodder for the corporate media to say, oh, obviously there was collusion, because Mueller was expecting the Russians to stay in Russia. And to his shock, legal representation for these Russians has now shown up and said, we want the trial. And Mueller attempted to basically get this totally unprecedented blanket order over the evidence. And the defense lawyers are saying this violates the principle of discovery. And Mueller is trying to prohibit defense counsel from sharing or discussing any discovery with any co-defendant. And Mueller's protective order would be unprecedented in the district. No published court opinion in the D.C. Circuit has ever allowed such a blanket protective order for unclassified discovery materials. The case law just isn't there. Mueller has hit the panic button. Now, as you know, anytime there is a report that comes on out about anything, it's going to be filled with redactions. And a lot of people joke about, you know, the page is just totally black. But the Senate is now actually starting to investigate the redactions by the FBI in some of their reports, because there are actually strict rules regarding redactions. Only certain amounts of certain types of material, like names that have to be protected for privacy, can be redacted. They can't just redact to cover up their own rear ends, and yet senators are starting to say that's exactly what's been going on. So basically, in a letter to Christopher Wray, some of these senators are saying that the FBI is trying to do a slow-walked, inadequate response to queries from the various investigative committees. Now, what Wray is going to do will be very telling. Is he actually going to do the job of the FBI director, or is he another James Comey? Because we seem to go from one cover-up artist to the next, 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 to the next. So let's talk about the economic news here. As you probably have already heard, Trump slapped China with $50 billion, with a B, in trade tariffs on imports. And a lot of people are starting to say, what happens when a trade war turns into a currency war, where instead of it being tariffs on steel and aluminum and whatever else they're tariffing, that it becomes a direct conflict between the U.S. Federal Reserve note and the yuan? Because if that happens, the U.S. is at a serious disadvantage because of its huge, huge debt. Now, for those of you on Obamacare near Wentzville, Missouri, Serco, who's an Obamacare processing center, is closing down. 850 jobs will be lost there. Now, getting on over to Europe and immigration, as you're probably no doubt aware, there's a little bit of a pinball game, if you will, going on with this ship of 650 migrants that were turned away from Italy. Apparently, they considered going to France. France turned them away. Supposedly, they're on their way to Spain now, at least the last that I heard. But somebody did a poll And in France, 75% of those polled said France cannot cope with another migration wave. So there is a popular uprising against this open border refugee situation. Apparently, Angela Merkel's coalition government is in serious risk, apparently regarding this, one of the coalition members in Bavaria, saying that it's time to start turning back refugees at the German border and let them apply for asylum from their home country. And it's turning into a brawl. Angela Merkel is still out there defending totally open borders. This could fracture the coalition and bring the Merkel government down. But it's happening all over Europe right now. They're going to close the borders. The refugee thing is over. Austria is currently conducting exercises on their borders in preparation for a wave of 80,000 migrants expected to attempt to cross through soon. Austria's neighbor, Slovenia, is also taking steps to staunch the flow of migrants. Back in 2015, they began building a razor wire fence along their border with Croatia after Hungary closed its borders and 180,000 migrants were redirected through the country of only 2 million people. Hungary has been adamant since the beginning. They will not be taking in refugees and migrants. And Prime Minister Viktor Orban has defended his country's refusal. Poland is also refusing to take in migrants, right alongside Hungary. The Czech Republic, there's a strong anti-migrant sentiment in the Czech Republic, so strong, in fact, that a recent poll showed 94% of Czechs want to deport all the refugees, just send them back. Now, of course, as you know, Italy turned away that ship carrying 629 refugees, and their newly elected Interior Minister, Matteo Salvini, is keeping his campaign promises. And he denied permission for the humanitarian ship Aquarius to dock. It's called humanitarian. It's basically a ferry. Malta also refused to take in the ship. Now, Denmark is still allowing entrance to refugees, but they're trying to discourage it. They're trying to put impediments in the way. Now, by nature of geography, Greece has ended up with an overwhelming number of asylum seekers, and it was supposed to be a situation in which the migrants would be accepted into Greece, processed, then sent somewhere else across the EU based on quotas. But a lot of the migrants, like Greece, they're actually refusing to leave. And this is leading to hard feelings among the Greeks, who are still struggling after the economic collapse of their country. And let's see, I think we already mentioned Slovakia. They're also starting to turn, no, that was Slovenia. I get them all confused. So add Slovakia to the list. This is growing all across Europe. They're tired of the open borders. They're tired of the refugees. We're getting a confirmation that, yes, indeed, Donald Trump is going to build a tent city along the border to detain the migrants. And they're hoping to shelter about 450 unaccompanied and accompanied minors who cross the U.S.-Mexico border. This is a partial solution. They're not going to be just allowed to wander on through and be processed somewhere else. But we've got to close these borders. Really, it's just out of control. Our economy cannot support them. We're in the same mess that Greece is in right now. Apparently, there is a new USCIS office. It's investigating thousands of citizens who got their U.S. citizenship through identity fraud. So that's one thing that stolen identities are being used for people to just go ahead and get the necessary paperwork to become phony U.S. citizens. Now, down in Arizona, there is a Representative David Stringer, and he's under fire right now. He's being called racist and all the other things by the open border people by saying that there are so many refugees and migrants in Arizona. He quipped, there aren't enough white kids to go around in the state schools now. But what he's saying is the demographics of Arizona are under threat. And he's saying in just 10 years, the demographics of the United States and Arizona will be different. It'll be a different country. And it'll be reflected in the voter base. Now, somebody leaked a copy of Paul Ryan's GOP amnesty deal, and it is the biggest amnesty scheme in U.S. history. And as we reported yesterday, part of the plan appears to be to just declare these people, they've got amnesty and load them into states to permanently flip them blue, ignoring the fact that even amnestied aliens are not supposed to be allowed to vote. They're literally stealing our country out from under us, and they're giving it away to people who should not be here at all. And some people are getting fed up with it because apparently Representative Stephen King, in an interview with Breitbart News, is saying that House Republicans are considering removing House Speaker Paul Ryan via a motion to vacate the chair, which would force a no-confidence vote. And this is because of Ryan's continuing efforts to undermine President Donald Trump's agenda. And I agree, that would be great if the House could do that. Because especially when you consider that Paul Ryan and his rhinos are supposed to be Republican, they're supposed to be on Trump's side, and they're pushing the liberal open borders agenda. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words.
My name is Don Wiskin, and at 42 years old, I suffered a massive heart attack, lost 35% of my heart to damaged tissue, and was supposed to spend the rest of my life on disability. What did I do? I took Extendivite, a garlic and cayenne mix of 7 herbs which rebuilt my heart and gave me back my life. For over 17 years now, I have made this formula available to you so you don't have to suffer the same thing I did. Clean your blocked arteries and strengthen your heart and boost your natural immune system. I'm 60 years old now and I still work every day. To get your Extendivite, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com. Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. the network thanks you.
If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. We'll plant 'em anywhere you like and blow up anyone. Whip this world into a frenzy, killing babies, dads, and moms. If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. If you got the money, well, we won't say we did. The towers.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And with this issue of Tommy Robinson, there has been a lot of fakery out there. We were reporting yesterday on how somebody took an aerial photo of this huge rally for a victorious football team, claimed it was a rally for Tommy Robinson. And I don't know if they're just doing this out of malice or spite, or to basically to get people to stop talking about Tommy Robinson. But it did happen again, and this time even I fell for it. The story that Tommy Robinson has been moved to a maximum security prison with a 71% Muslim population has now been discredited. Yes, he's in a secure prison, but apparently the population of Muslims in that prison is about 7%. So again, I don't know why they're putting this information out there to basically call into the question the entire issue and maybe get people to say, I don't want to go near it anymore. I don't want to be made a fool of anymore. Now, here's an interesting little situation. Somebody did a survey, and they found out that while a man sending an unsolicited naked picture of himself to a woman is considered being a pervert, that when a woman sends an unsolicited naked picture of herself to a man, it's considered pretty much harmless flirtation. So there's a bias and there's a double standard in this. And you know, you can't have it both ways. If it's perversion when the guy does it, it's perversion when the girl does it. And if it's just harmless flirtation, let's just go with it. I tend to go with the harmless flirtation. And the reason I say that is because many, many years ago, when I was in the film industry and I did a little bit of work in Europe, and at that time, feminism was just getting cranked up in the United States, the kind of feminism where you weren't allowed to flatter women. It was considered offensive, patriarchal, aggressive. And so you just walked around minding your own business. And then I got to Europe, and it was completely the opposite. The women there expect to be flirted with. And by golly, if you don't pay attention to them, if you don't tell them that they're pretty, some of your paperwork may go missing. I mean, that's how intense it was. So these things are always a matter of fashion. It's not graven in stone. Nobody is born into this world thinking that any of this stuff is offensive. You have to be taught. Now, apparently, there's this article. Gavin McInnes is saying we need to bring manhood back. And he's starting what's called the Proud Boys Club. I'm going to sign up for that one. And, of course, this has triggered the feminists. No, we can't have real men out there. We have to control the world, and we can only do that with pussified men. All right, let's take some phone calls here. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I was just going to say that, Mike. It seems like the women are becoming manly here, and the men are becoming wusses. It's just like, you know?
Not in this household.
Well, in the country as a whole, women, you know, they got more tattoos than I have, and I don't have any.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, on the soccer game, the Russia. I don't know if you talked about that. Yes, Russia beat Saudi Arabia 5-0, and I was surprised because Saudi Arabia is good at cutting people's heads off and kicking their heads around. You would think they'd be better at soccer.
Well, see, that's the problem. The soccer balls are perfectly round. They're not used to it.
And then speaking about Russia, Mike, I don't know if you talked about this either, about the Navy's on, they put it on alert off the Ukrainian coast in case they try to pull something, because I don't think Putin's going to fall for this twice.
Yeah, it looks like something big's about to break up in Ukraine. The indicators are all there. I don't think they hauled all that hardware across Ukraine just for the fun of it.
And then I wanted to talk. I go on Zero Head July. I don't know if a lot of your listeners do, but I find in the message boards, I really hate it. Just everybody's angry at China, like it's their fault that we're in this situation, or it's the world. People are blaming the world, or China's is ripping the world off, or the world is ripping us off. We've been ripping people off. Don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. 30 years of war, $15 trillion. What do we have to show for it? Like I said yesterday, we dug our own ditch, man, and
we did, and a lot of people know that. And this attempt to demonize and blame China feels like an organized propaganda campaign to me to try and shout down critics of Donald Trump's trade war. China deserves it. China's doing that. You're going to see this no matter what goes on. The other side is going to get demonized, because that's all the United States has left right now is its self-image, and that's rapidly eroding.
Is that like tribalism? Like during the Vietnam War, those the gooks. It's the same thing with what we're doing to Russia.
That's exactly right. It's dehumanizing and demonizing the enemy. Whether it's gooks, slants, krauts, hajis, it's the same mechanism time after time. Dustin, got to let you go. Got to take another commercial break. Back with more phone calls after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354, or visit MIG911.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath Head to aroutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at aroutfitting.com.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here to Errol in the Netherlands. Aloha, Errol. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Nui Nui. And how's the volcano doing?
It's still volcanoing out there, and no indications of when it's going to stop.
Okay. Anyways, I like Dustin from New Jersey. He's a great guy, and he calls a lot in. And so I like him. I see very negative posts on the YouTube chat, but let him call in. He's a great guy. Anyways, China. I want to talk about the trade. I see now a headline here, and it says China. In het Nederlands is het China tegen Trump. Handelsoorlog is officieel. So, when I'm going to translate it, is China says to Trump, the trade war is official. Now, there are not 22 trillion. No, it's 222 trillion dollars because China has so many dollars. When they drop it, they say, let's get rid of all the dollars. What do you think will happen?
Well, if all the countries in the world were to drop the dollar at the same time, the U.S. economy would implode.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was my point. Thank you for taking my call, and the best to Claire also.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll certainly forward that along to her, and we're going to switch over to Jim in Chicago. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. A couple of things. You mentioned about the Obama Library. It was reported yesterday that the governor of Illinois will be giving $176 million to improve the roads around the library site. And I said to myself, number one, Illinois is broke. Number two, you're going to be displacing a lot of people. And number three, if you can find money to fix the roads around the library, why can't you find money to improve the school, the homeless, and other things?
I agree, especially when it turns out that edifice they're going to build there in Illinois isn't actually going to be the library. I forget where it's actually going to be, but it's going to be someplace else.
Now, I heard it was going to be in New York City.
Could very well be. Could very well be.
Right.
There was a running gag that he was going. There was a running gag that he was going to actually have it out here on the islands of Hawaii to make it more difficult for researchers to come on out and go through the papers.
Jesus. And the final thing, Michael, I am very much anti-illegal immigration. But the one thing that disturbs me, granted, a lot of the kids cross the border with their parents. The thing that really disturbs me is when you separate the children from the parents. I have a hard time with that.
I do too, and I think it was meant to act as a deterrent. Don't come across the border, you might lose your children. But apparently from the numbers, it hasn't really worked. And so we need to stop doing that, and we need to find something that actually does work. And what's going to work is simply stopping them at the border and turning them right around, and start to enforce Title VIII, and go after all these sanctuary city governors and mayors and so forth, and cite them for Title VIII violations. We have the existing laws; they are not being enforced. And that's something that Donald Trump should be doing. It's certainly something that Jeff Sessions should be doing, but he's not doing that either.
Well, no, Sessions is quoting the Bible. That's what he's doing. Regarding the illegals and their kids, that's what he's doing. He's quoting the Bible.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm serious. It's all over the news. If you can look it up on YouTube, how he is quoting Romans 13, saying it's okay for kids to be separated from their parents. Check it out.
Yeah. There it is. Well, first of all, that
Yeah.
right there is a violation of the First Amendment, or the intent of the First Amendment,
right?
Which is we are not a government based on religion. We need to be a government that's based on common sense. Common sense has become an endangered species in our society, I think.
Right. And well, not only that, though, by reading Romans 13, which I did do, it doesn't even talk about separating kids. I'm pretty sure Lady Claire can verify that when she comes on.
Okay.
So I'll let you go, Michael. Have a nice weekend.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the news here. Over in New York, Andrew Cuomo is pushing a bill to make it even easier to take away people's guns rights. And this has to do with that new concept of the red flag. And this bill, which still needs to be approved by the state Senate, allows a wide range of people to seek these what are called GVROs. This includes police officers, prosecutors, family, household members, school employees such as guidance counselors, teachers, coaches, and administrators. It allows a judge to issue a temporary GVRO if he determines there's probable cause to believe the respondent is likely to engage in conduct that would result in serious harm to himself or others. That is a very, very low threshold. And simply showing on up and pounding on the door and say, give us your guns, that could trigger somebody. And when you look at the issue of these mass shootings triggered by prescription psychiatric medication, they often occur with no warning. I mean, after the fact, they'll say, oh, we should have known. We think there were some signs there. Getting on to our volcano, we've had another record 500 earthquakes hit the Kilauea volcano in a single 24-hour period. One of them hit 5.3 on the Richter scale. And the good news here is that Trump has now approved disaster aid for our big island, including federal emergency housing aid and other relief for victims of this now 6-week-old Kilauea eruption. Some 700 plus homes have been destroyed. And an estimated 2,800 residents have lost their homes or have been forced from their dwellings under evacuation orders. I saw some interesting pictures of homes where the lava just literally came up to the back of it and stopped, and the house is still there. Might be a little hard getting in and out of it for a while here. Interesting little article, this coming out of Natural News, which is starting to sort of take on social media and its censorship. And it says, for America to survive, Google must be defeated. And they're pointing out how the radical left, the liberals, which now control these tech giants, they can't win any debate or election based on facts or logic. So what they're doing is they're resorting to brazen censorship to silence all opposing views in the hopes of dominating the culture by cheating. And these so-called activists want the playing field to be permanently tilted in favor of their politically correct worldview so that democratic outcomes like the 2016 presidential election can never happen again. This is coming from Representative Kevin McCarthy of California. And he says, censorship like this undermines public discourse and trust in our institutions, and it's likely to get worse before it gets better. And he's absolutely right. The liberals have taken over social media. They're now trying to basically block any but their own view from getting on out there. That's very un-American. It's very opposite the First Amendment. But we may be on the edge of a pushback on that as well, because believe it or not, Facebook is seeing a major drop in people using it for news. Now, people are still using Facebook to find hot dates or talk about their vacations and the rest of it. But in terms of the reading of the news, it's fallen something. Hang on, let me look for the actual numbers. It's 9 percentage points in the United States, 20 points with other younger groups. The use of Facebook for news in Brazil has fallen to 52%. That's a 17-point change. So, Zuck, when you start thinking you're the big corporate media and you start censoring content like the big corporate media, you're going to start seeing the audience troubles that the big corporate media have right now. Their numbers are not good either. More people are watching Nickelodeon than watch CNN. Now, Bill Ottman has founded a new social media platform called Minds, and he's basically looking to challenge Facebook, Instagram, and other social media companies with his new platform. And we need to get off of Facebook and Twitter and go to these new platforms and start giving them our business and looking at their ads so that they can do some revenue. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin has stated that he wants Russia to become a top 5 tech power, a digital superpower, if you will, by 2024. He wants Russia to be up there building supercomputers and other electronics. Now, a lot of people are wondering what's going on with Julian Assange, because there's almost a silence around him. He's been isolated in the Ecuadorian embassy. Part of the problem is that Rafael Correa, the former president of Ecuador, is the one who granted Julian political refuge and citizenship. And he's out there saying now that what they're doing to Julian now, keeping him isolated, virtually amounts to torture. The problem is that Ecuador is now being led by Lenin Moreno, who is the usual suck-up to the United States in the time-honored way, with Julian Assange being the shuttlecock being banged back and forth between them. Now, as you know, there's been a bit of a kerfuffle over the issue of the so-called self-driving cars, to the point where now the manufacturers of these vehicles are being told they can't use that term any longer, because there have been several high-profile accidents where the cars in autopilot mode are banging into things, in one case killing people. So Tesla did an update to their firmware on the car that reminds drivers that they've got to hold the wheel every 30 seconds. And the drivers are complaining because they're holding the wheel at the time. So Tesla's going to have to rush out yet another update that actually senses whether or not the steering wheel is being held or not, and then every 30 seconds will nag it. Well, I got to tell you from where I'm sitting, even if I were going to have some kind of autopilot system in my car beyond the cruise control, which frankly I never use anyway, to have that thing nagging me every 30 seconds to take the wheel, what's the point of having all this so-called auto drive technology if it's not really working? And it betrays a bad habit that corporations seem to have of putting products out there that don't really work as advertised, and then they say, don't worry, we'll fix it down the road. There'll be a patch somewhere down the road that will fix it. And by the way, speaking of patches, if you're on Apple products like the iPhone and iPad, do not update to iOS 11.4. There is something in it that is just draining batteries. It's increased battery usage by 25%. Apple says they have no idea why it's doing that, to which my response is, why don't you know why it's doing it? Don't you test these things before you send them out? Over at the SPY people, the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity, I guess they got their own little office now, they're working on a new high-density data storage system to hoard all of your data, because if you look at all the population of the planet and how much data we generate every single day, it takes a lot of storage. And so they're working on this molecular information storage system, which will store huge amounts of data on what are called sequence-controlled polymer, which are molecules with a similar makeup and structure to DNA. So that, I think, will be the plateau of storage density. For those of you who live in Chile and who like to ski, in fact, for pretty much the entire southern hemisphere, the ski resorts are all opening early this year. Chile got 40 inches of snow, and Valle Nevado, basically, they're open as of today. So the ski season is open in the southern hemisphere. Over in Idaho, a young boy has been diagnosed with the plague, according to health officials. This is the first human case in the state since the early 1990s. It's thought to be the only one reported this year. Now, officials are racing to determine whether he contracted the disease in Idaho or during a recent family trip to Oregon. So that might actually be happening. Okay. Actually, I think Claire's going to want to talk about that one, so I'm going to skip on over here. The state of Massachusetts is suing the maker of the prescription painkiller OxyContin, which has been blamed for spawning America's opioid epidemic. And the lawsuit is naming leading executives and members of the multi-billionaire Sackler family that owns Purdue Pharmaceutical. And the lawsuit accuses Purdue Pharmaceutical of spinning a web of illegal deceit to fuel the deadly drug abuse crisis, which is being done to boost profits. In other words, they're behaving just like the street corner heroin dealers, except that they have television advertising to help them along, and doctors who are incentivized to write these prescriptions. And I'm glad the state of Massachusetts is taking action, because this has become a serious, serious problem. Now, Japan is now halting all sales of Canadian wheat. To be more accurate, let me rephrase this. They're stopping the importation of Canadian wheat. They've discovered that the wheat, which was supposed to be GMO-free, was contaminated with the Monsanto Roundup Ready gene. So now Canada's wheat crop has become contaminated. Japan does not want GMO. China doesn't want GMO. Russia doesn't want GMO. What do they know that we don't know? By the way, Monsanto is no more because Bayer, which now owns Monsanto, is saying that they'll be doing away with the brand name as soon as August, when the $66 billion acquisition is expected to be complete. The fact is, Monsanto has become a very hated name. It's a tarnished brand. So I understand what they're going to do is, instead of calling it Monsanto, they're going to call it Warm Fluffy Kittens, in the hope that that will improve the public image and acceptance of the product line here. All right, we're going to take a break here for commercials. We'll be back with another segment, followed by the lovely Lady Claire. We'll be right back.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75%. Dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat. Very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, My heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take a phone call from Dan in Canada. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I just wanted to mention there was a caller a week before last. I think his name was John from Ireland. And he was a great caller. And he mentioned talking a lot about Hamas. And I recently discovered from Ron Paul speaking in Congress, Dr. Ron Paul, that Israel created Hamas.
Yes.
So all these attacks that we hear, all these rockets that fly in the middle of nowhere, this is Israel's creation, or they're just really have bad luck.
Well, let me tell you the history of this. Israel likes to play this little game called divide and conquer. And back when Yasser Arafat was leading the Palestine Liberation Organization, Shin Bet created Hamas as a controlled opposition. So that Israel could play this game. Everybody says we should sit down at the peace talks, but we don't know who to talk to. Is PLO in charge or is Hamas in charge? Then Yasser Arafat was assassinated, and all of a sudden Hamas said, you know something? We're now the de facto government of Palestine. And so they basically cut off all connection with Israel and started trying to run Palestine, at which point Israel set up the Palestinian Authority as controlled opposition. And by the way, if you're paying attention, over in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority is attacking protesters who are protesting in support of the Gazans, which tells you who's really working for Israel. So this is a game that Israel has played repeatedly over and over, saying we don't know who to talk to because they keep creating these controlled opposition groups.
Exactly. And another point I wanted to make before you get on there with Claire, I know she's going to probably cover Israel, but they just developed this hypersonic weapon. And I'm thinking, how do they have the money to develop hypersonic weapons when the United States gives them $5 billion a year in aid? It's supposed to go to defense. But, I mean, how do they have this technology available? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
Anyways,
the United States makes a big deal of saying, that all of this money is to defend yourself from the evil Arab nations that you fear. But Israel does, in fact, spend it on developing offensive weapons.
Okay, it just seems that they don't need it because, I mean, they have advanced technology that they stole from you guys, and I don't know, that's the way I see it.
No, Israel doesn't need our money, and they don't need our weapons. They just want them, and they think that constitutes natural law. They have this unshakable sense of entitlement to other people's weapons and monies.
Unbelievable. All right, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Over in Uganda, there's this inventor, Brian Gita, 24, and he won the Royal Academy of Engineering's Africa Prize for a device that detects malaria by shining a red beam of light on the patient's finger. Now, this looks like a modification of the photoplethysmograph pulse and oxygen level detector, but this one looks for malaria. So well done, and definitely needed in that part of the world. So there's the music. We're going to take a break for station identification, and we will be back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read a few from Amazon.com. Dr. Sam Serino reviewed the Extendivite product. Good ingredients, feeling much better since taking product. It seems that the tablets work well. Once again, thank you for your product. My acid reflux has really improved thanks to the Extendivite. Together with my thumb joints, the pain is gone and I'm able to grip things much better. My friend has peripheral arterial disorder and their lower legs were hurting in a red color, but thankfully, there has been a significant improvement. Kind regards, Janice. My husband feels a big difference using Extendivite. Thank you. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire, who, as always, on our third hour of Fridays, comes in with her unique perspective on the world. So, Lady Claire, what's the first thing that you want to talk about?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is an article by John Rappaport from Blacklisted News. And the headline here is, "Many ordinary medications cause depression, and public trust in the pharmaceutical industry has just hit a new low."
Well, gee, I wonder why that might be.
Duh,
but,
you think.
I mean, I saw this article before, and this is definitely an area of concern.
Yeah, and what it is this this cycle that patients are in. Patients present some sort of illness, they get treated, but the drug which they're treated with causes more symptoms, which are diagnosed as a new illness, and then new drugs are given, even more symptoms, and it goes on, you know. And people are suffering because a lot of the exposition on these drugs is never put onto the boxes or bottles that they come in.
Yeah, and those package inserts are just printed on very thin paper in microscopic type, supposedly to save shipping costs.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're starting to realize that a lot of what we're being told are diseases like Crohn's disease may actually be adverse reactions to other medications. Certainly never knew about Crohn's disease when I was a kid, or even psoriasis. I never saw anybody with psoriasis when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And now it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Peanut anaphylaxis is a classic example.
Oh, yeah.
When I was a kid, nobody got allergic to peanuts. And then they start putting peanut oil in vaccines, and all of a sudden peanut anaphylaxis is all over the place. Did they take the peanut oil out of the vaccines? No. They start selling EpiPens.
Yes. Yeah, for anaphylactic shock. And Yahoo News covered the story. 1/3 of Americans are taking prescription and over-the-counter drugs such as birth control pills, antacids, common heart medications that may raise the risk of depression. And to the gals out there listening and watching, and the men who love them, please take time to talk to your doctor if you are thinking about getting on the pill. And I say this because of a study that was done in Finland last year as a doctoral dissertation, that chances of breast cancer are 35% higher in women who are on some sort of oral antibiotic or any kind of implant that has the measured
You mean
drug.
oral contraceptive.
Oral contraceptive,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Or an implant which has measured medication in it. So just please be very careful.
Well,
And-
there's something else,
yeah.
you know, don't put it on your doctor. Take responsibility yourself, because in many cases, the doctors themselves, they're told what the drug will do by the pharmaceutical sales representative. They may not have the time to read all of those package inserts, and they may not even really care. They may be completely unaware
Yeah.
of the adverse effects of the medication.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to take it upon yourself. And there are online resources, including the FDA's own website,
Yeah.
where you can research the medication, research its contraindications.
Mhm.
But this idea that common medications are causing depression, do they fix the medications?
No.
They sell you antidepressants.
Yeah.
And then you go on out and you shoot down, you know, a blimp or something.
And the antidepressants, interestingly enough, are the only drug class that carries an explicit warning called a black box warning of suicide risk.
But
you
it's
know.
really, really tiny.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to go on now to what is happening with Americans who are, let's say, underemployed, struggling with IRS debt. And so the IRS has now contracted private debt collection companies, and they're crushing poor American taxpayers. Now, they implemented this private debt collection, the PDC, in 2017. And apparently, to a researcher in this field, low-income taxpayers whose debts are assigned to private collection agencies are being locked into debt servicing installment plans they just can't afford, as many of them are unable to cover even basic living expenses. Now, that was a result which was reached on the 6th of June by a researcher named Olson, and who documented that 43% of taxpayers assigned to PCAs via the IRS had an income lower than their allowable living expenses. I mean, and if you've ever dealt with a private debt collection company, you know just how completely nasty they can be.
Yes.
You know, and I think that the IRS was rather thuggish in their decision to use private tax collectors.
No, I think it's more significant than that. I
Mhm.
think the issue here is if they're going to this step, it's telling us that the reality is there is a huge non-compliance
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
contrary to all the talk about record tax collections and everything, I think there's a problem. The American people have run out of money. Okay? I'm sure that most Americans don't want to get hassled. They'd like to be able to pay their taxes. They simply don't.
Yeah.
They have to make a choice.
Yeah.
Do I pay taxes or do I pay the rent and do I buy food?
Yeah.
And people are having to make that hard choice.
Right.
All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. And back to you, Claire.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of the non-compliance. And I love the names of the 4 private companies participating in the program: CBE Group, Conserve of Fairport, Performant of Livermore, California, and the one I love the best, Pioneer of Horseheads in New York. Well, you get the reference, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I
okay.
do. I do.
And there has been some very interesting and disturbing data coming from that shooting last fall at the Mandalay Bay. All of a sudden, now the Las Vegas Police Department has been dumping a lot of information, trying to muddy the waters here, but apparently there is a new video which is showing Vegas shooting strike team being told to turn off their body cameras. Mike, why?
Well, obviously, they didn't want a record of what was actually going on in
Yeah.
that room that they entered.
Uh-huh.
And one of the other revelations that came on out
Mhm.
since then is that Stephen Paddock was not, in fact, alone in that room.
Uh-huh.
There were 2 women with him.
Yeah.
So this was obviously a setup. Maybe the
Yeah.
2 women were used to lure Stephen Paddock to that room.
It's possible,
To set him
yeah.
up as the patsy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very obvious it was another one of these staged operations.
Yeah.
There was another report that came out the other day about yet another location where gunshots were being fired.
Yeah.
Other than the Mandalay Bay.
Right, right. And apparently, with these couple of videos, an officer repeats, "Camera is off," and that is how each video ends. That's more than a little disturbing.
Yes.
You know, apparently, Las Vegas Journal has reported it wasn't clear when or why the cameras were activated. One video is 18 minutes long, one is 20 minutes, and the 2 others are just over a minute each. And we still have the mystery, as you said, of why the officers were told to turn their cameras off.
There's only one possible conclusion.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
did not want there to be any kind of a record of
Mhm.
what was actually seen in that room
Mhm.
until it could be dressed as a set to tell
Yeah.
the official story
Right.
of crazed lone nut Stephen Paddock
Mhm.
and his arsenal of, nasty weapons.
Yeah. You covered this a little bit earlier, but I'd like to cover it as well. Apparently, the U.S. and China have, in this sort of duel of tariffs, slap tariffs on a lot of each other's countries' products. And the thing that disturbs me is I know how quickly trade wars can morph into actual shooting wars, and I'm hoping that this is not what D.C. is planning to do, you know. Mike, could I have a few more of your thoughts on that?
Well,
These tariffs.
again, I was in agreement with Make America Great as a concept.
Yes.
But my idea of Make America Great and Trump's idea of Make America Great are obviously 2 different things.
Yeah.
Because my idea of Make America Great was rebuild our infrastructure, stop all the wars, bring all those people home,
Yep.
Get our infrastructure back online, start rebuilding our manufacturing, clean up our agriculture,
Mhm.
and start making America great. Start taking the world lead again in technology and manufacturing
Mhm.
and industry. And instead, the Make America Great that is emerging from the Trump administration is one of we're going to slap down all the other countries so that we, can be seen as being superior. It
Mhm.
almost reminds me of this Steve Martin sketch on the original Saturday Night Live,
Mhm.
where they're playing a bunch of cavemen, and Steve Martin is the intelligent, smart caveman,
Mhm.
and Bill Murray was playing the tribal chief, the
Mhm.
leader. And after they go to sleep at night, Bill Murray comes up with a rock and smashes the smart caveman,
Mhm.
and then stands up and says, I'm now the smartest one.
Yeah.
And that almost seems to be the attitude we're getting out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, the way I describe it is thugocracy.
Yeah, that's a good way to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I did want to revisit, and you've mentioned this in your previous 2 hours, but I did want to revisit the Tommy Robinson story. And yeah, I think it caught all of us kind of a little bit off guard there.
Yes.
But there's something I want to say about this and about immigration and what it should mean to people coming into either the UK or this country. I can't imagine that the UK would have done that, because had this man, or if this man would have been in a prison with a very heavily Muslim population.
Well, now that turned out to be fake
I know.
news.
I
All
know.
All right.
But the last thing that any sensible person in government in the UK would have wanted to do was to make this guy a martyr to a racist movement, which did have some valid cases in point, which should have never happened, like the Muslim grooming gangs, grooming children for sex, where the people accused of this did get convicted. And there's something I want to share with our audiences. as a gal who is very happily married to a pan-racial man and conducts 2 English-speaking choirs at a truly rainbow faith community filled with people of every ethnicity you could imagine, I believe that racism for the sake of racism is just dumb. That having been said, when immigrants come to this country legally, I would want to welcome them and understand that they are allowed to engage in whatever faith practices they hold dear. But the moment they tell me what I cannot do in the name of their faith and tradition, I'm going to get angry, Mike. I'm going to get angry. And the people of the UK have, I think, been marginalized, particularly people who were born there, have been marginalized almost to the breaking point.
Yes, it's starting to happen all across Europe.
Yeah, and I've been seeing that. And in my world, and okay, guys, I'm a confessing Christian. I'm a Methodist. I like the big tentness, if you will, of this faith tradition. Any faith should never be about coercion. It should be about how people individually understand God's love and how that causes me to respond in the real world. That, to me, is what faith should be about. Now, I would never eat a bacon or ham sandwich in front of either a devout Muslim or a devout Orthodox Jew. That would simply be insensitive in the extreme. But the minute someone tells me I can't eat bacon in my own home, there is the moment where I would dive for a copy of the Constitution and Bill of Rights and ask politely that that person read them right there in front of me to understand that they are not legally allowed to force me not to eat bacon in private.
And she loves bacon.
I love
Take
bacon.
it from me.
I don't eat a lot of it because I know it's
You want to
nasty.
clear your throat?
Yes, I don't have to
Okay.
cough. I just need to swallow a little
All
water.
right. Now, do you remember a little while ago when we had that bogus Hawaii ballistic missile alert?
Oh.
Just now I was noticing on the top
Mhm.
of our TV, there was another alert for where we are with no content. It just said, alert declared for these counties in Hawaii, and then it just ended and cut on off. So they still don't seem to have their their act together. Anyway, go ahead.
All right, and the next has to do with other countries in Europe, which are close to have reached their tipping points. A member of the European Parliament has slammed EU globalists for what they describe as an Islamic invasion of Europe. The guy is a UKIP member, which is to the right, I believe, in British politics.
Yes.
Gerard Batten was causing howls in the European Parliament after he accused globalists of allowing an Islamic invasion of the continent. And he made the observation that this has turned parts of Europe into foreign countries. And he really savaged them for staging the conversation about helping defenseless refugee families, when in reality, these migrants are primarily young men from Islamic countries.
Young men of military age.
Yeah.
There's actually very few families coming on in. And he's absolutely right. It is an invasion, as we were saying yesterday. Immigration has rules. Immigration has limits. Immigration has requirements.
Mhm.
There are none here. It's just the borders are open and the hordes are pouring in across the border. And there are places in Europe where the Europeans dare not go anymore.
Yeah, they're no-go zones.
And it's literally being taken away from them, all
Mhm.
because George Soros dreams of a one-world government and his rear end on the golden throne of planet Earth.
Yes, I hear you. But the thing that we have to do is take a step back. Why are these people fleeing their homelands? They're running away from the horrendous conditions the wars in these countries have put these countries into.
That's part of the reason,
Yeah.
but also there are some of Soros' NGOs down there
Mhm.
literally offering incentives. And one of the reasons there has been such problems with the refugees once they get to Europe is they made that very long trip with promises that they would get free stuff, that there would be free housing, and in some cases there has been an effort to try and accommodate them, but there simply isn't the money to do it. So these refugees get up there, they're not getting what they were promised, and they're very angry and they're feeling betrayed, and they're acting out against the local population.
Yeah. And I do have an idea here which might bring to bear the solving of the problem. Only place the immigrants from Africa and the Middle East in the homes and properties owned by members of the European Parliament and George Soros properties, the problem will take care of itself.
I imagine that it absolutely will. But, I think we can assume that Soros and the European Parliament are all NIMBYs, which stands for not in my backyard.
Right, right. And we have another companion article. Le Pen, Orban, Wilders among Kremlin's fifth column, hell-bent on destroying Europe. And this was a statement by Guy Verhofstadt, a Belgian member of Parliament, European Parliament, and lead negotiator for the Brexit for the bloc. And he singled out these people as fifth columnists who take Kremlin money and intelligence.
Yes.
Okay, sir?
Brexit is a Russian plot.
Right,
that's the new spin out there.
Prove it. Where is your evidence?
Prove it. I mean, everybody can see why the people of Great Britain want to leave.
Yeah.
And why all these other countries are all of a sudden starting to close their borders.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with Russia.
No.
But these days, every time there's a failed liberal policy, what do? Oh, it's Russia's fault. Putin did it. Whether it's Hillary Clinton losing the election, oh, it was a Russian plot.
Yep.
Or the EU is starting to come apart, oh, it's definitely a Russian plot.
Yep.
The liberals cannot deal with the reality of their own failings. And that's exactly what's happening here. So they're just going to go on screaming, it's Russia's fault, it's Russia's fault, it's Russia's fault.
Yeah. And you were mentioning those countries that have started to pull back on the borders and pull back on immigration. For Austria, it's gotten so desperate that Austria is conducting border defense drills for a wave of expected 80,000 migrants.
Yep.
And they're also going to be conducting border security exercises on 25 June on the border town of Spielfeld in preparation for these migrants who are expected to travel through the route to Western and Central Europe.
All right, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Most basic diseases are caused by yeast in the gut and metals in the liver, and we all have a bit of both. The garlic in Extendivite has a yeast-killing effect in the gut while also helping the sulfur enzyme in the liver get rid of the metals. Extendivite just may improve your overall health. Products like Extendivite are the only way we are going to get our society healthy. And if you're waiting for the government and pharmaceutical care to solve your health problems, you're going to have a long, disappointing wait, I think. Extendivite is a complete formula for extended life in the new millennium. 80 can be the new 60. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently everybody's getting up for the U.S. Open, and golf is going to be the distraction while
Oh, please.
the world burns.
Yeah, yeah.
Your next story, my dear.
All right. It has been confirmed now that Google protects Big Pharma by censoring natural health news. And folks, if you would like another rather sober and fact-based website to go to, because as we talked about at the beginning of this hour, you've got to be your own best advocate when it comes to your and your family's physical and mental health. And naturalnews.com is one of those sites to which I would very much like to refer you. And apparently it's being censored in favor of the pharmaceutical and government lobbyist reports, which are going to paint beautiful pictures of all these drugs, which may in fact do you and your family harm. And also the Health Ranger, the founder of naturalnews.com, has had his YouTube channel permanently deleted by Silicon Valley leftists. And that's been a trend for some time.
It has been a trend for some time.
Mhm.
And Google is now out there saying that they are basically any search result that goes against accepted conventional wisdom
Yeah.
will be down at the bottom of the list. In other words, whatever the official story or corporate stories about everything gets favorable treatment in the search results, unless you are using the special semaphore to go to a specific site. And apparently there is something you can put in the URL that says you are specifically looking for alternative points of view, which I haven't figured out what that is just yet. But this is happening all across the corporate social media, which is why we've got to stop using Google and Facebook and Twitter and start using search engines that have no built-in bias.
Yeah.
Because if you go to these corporate search engines right now, they're not going to let you see that the medicine you're about to take could cause you harm.
Yeah.
Because that might hurt the pharmaceutical industry. All right, let's take a couple of phone calls here. Keith in Montana. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, do you remember your favorite quotations on Jonathan Pollard and the increased immigration to Israel?
My quotes on them. I remember that it did happen. That's
Well, yeah, you know about the premise behind Pollard and what Israel did to increase immigration.
Well, Pollard basically stole these secrets, America's nuclear targeting secrets, and he sold them to Israel, and had the U.S. and the Soviet Union gone to war at that time, the U.S. would have lost. Israel turned around and traded those nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union in exchange for increased immigration quotas of Jews to get to Israel. That was the betrayal.
Okay, so on that premise there, we have Europe being flooded with immigrants there, in which the rabbi comes out and says that Europe is too deadly for or dangerous for the Jews, that they should move to Israel. Now we have the rise of anti-Semitism in the Ukraine, in which they're now saying that former Russian Jews should move to Israel. Do you see the premise that's behind all this?
Well,
as
yeah,
as
I
the
mean,
video on YouTube.
Israel's concerned about the demographics of the area. Because the Palestinians' birth rate is quite high, And most of the people living in Israel really prefer a relaxed, carefree life without children. And Israel is desperate not to have the Jewish population become a minority, because then people would say it's another indication it's an apartheid state.
Well, like I say, that if you start adding this up, though, like that video of the Zionist Jews admit that immigration is number one on their agenda. The same thing with Israel being awarded the contracts to build the border walls here. I just call it Stockholm Syndrome, if you ask me, though. But this is what I see, is that the immigration is being pushed, of course, and this is to scare the Jews, as you've mentioned yourself, that most Jewish kids today are raised from infancy there, that they're the most hated in the world. And, of course, this is the biggest way to promote immigration is by fear.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
a tactic that the Israeli government has used forever and ever since its inception.
And by the way, have you noticed that those Middle Eastern migrants who are pouring into Europe right now are pouring out of the areas that Israel covets for its biblical Israel, from the Nile to the Euphrates?
Yeah, so I was just going to point that out about how nefarious this is getting there. That it's a planned agenda. There, it's not like that report on antiwar.com where it talked about the 60 million refugees. They omitted the word war, but they were from the three countries that the Allied so-called forces were bombing, just like in World War II, the Allied terror bombings,
yes,
which decimated the cities of Europe. And now we have the mass immigration, the roads lined by the millions of those fleeing these. So anyway, I hear your break here. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there, okay?
All right. Thanks an awful lot. Thanks for the phone call. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. By Mel. Great product. My husband and father-in-law use it regularly. Both my husband and father-in-law have had significant change in their blood pressure and overall health. By Amazon customers. It works for me. returned to buy the tincture and the capsules as they were on sale during February. Unlike some other products, this one worked for blood pressure and occasional irregular heartbeat. Extendivite produced noticeable results after just 2 bottles, a 4-month supply. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think this supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here. Mateus in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael and Claire. Hope you guys are having a good weekend.
Aloha.
Soon. Just a brief insight, a joke, and a question for both of you, which I'll take off the air. So just the insight is that, the idea of a good way to tell if something is a good idea or not is to ask the question, like, what would happen if everybody did it?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and before I ask the question, wouldn't it be fair to say that if the answer was the end of the human species, then that would obviously be a bad thing, whatever it is?
Correct.
Now, this is very annoying. This is how Socrates got himself in trouble. So I apologize to anybody that's gay right now. It's just considered a mental exercise. Basically, if we were all gay, then nobody would be having children. It would be the end of the human species.
Correct.
And that's the liberal agenda, is basically to make us all gay.
They're not going to
anyway,
succeed. They're not going to succeed. There's going to be a pushback. But the issue is complicated by the fact, at least in my opinion, that the reason there are gays in our species, it is a natural population limiting system. Because if you look throughout history, when you have periods of the greatest civil stress, hunger, starvation, war, overcrowding, you also get the highest per capita incidence of homosexuality. And so I think it's a natural built-in population control mechanism, which means that the homosexuals, the gays, not only have every right to be here, they are actually indispensable to the long-term survival of the human race.
And Mateus, I have a thought that I'd like to share with you. Not all gay, lesbian, or transgendered people don't necessarily not want to have kids. I know of lesbian and gay and transgendered couples which have adopted, which have found a way to, let's say, create surrogacy for themselves.
Or artificial insemination.
Yeah, and I've known good people who were a part of the spectrum of this population who definitely wanted to have kids and did. And the kids are doing just fine. So I think that that is also something to be considered.
Yeah, it's to be considered. I guess I'm just being annoyingly technical about the idea that if everybody did it, it would be a bad thing. But nobody's advocating everybody does it. So
no.
No.
I'll just move on then. So my new original joke is they just discovered the first LGBTQ dinosaur bones. And did you hear what the name of it, what they called it?
The Masturbodon?
No, it's a liberal dinosaur bones. It's a tranny-saurus.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, so now for your questions, I'll take off here. So for Claire, it's the question of how much of a nicer person do you think I would be or anybody else if we didn't see 1,000 rapes and 1,000 murders on TV and movies? And then for Mike, it's the question of did Russia actually invade Poland in 1939 in an aggressive way? And I'll just gonna say good weekend, and I'm gonna get off there right now. I'll go back to work. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, Claire, I'll answer mine first because my answer is short. I don't think you can invade somebody in a non-aggressive way. How do you invade somebody in a nice, polite, friendly, inviting way? It doesn't really work.
No.
Anyway, Claire?
That question, I think, is a good question, but sometimes you find that art does imitate life, and I tend to not want to watch movies or TV shows where there's a lot of that going on. I don't like violence because for me there's enough in the real world, but I think it has to do with artistic judgment of directors and producers. I would like to see a lot more film and television where that isn't sort of the norm. But I do think it is reflective, if you will, of what is going on in the real world today. And although my tendency would be to not want to watch stuff with a lot of that, Mike, I'd like your thoughts on that too.
Well, show business is first and foremost a business, and the studios are going to make the movies that they think will attract the most people to buy tickets.
Right.
And unfortunately, throughout the history of entertainment, sex and violence tends to sell. And studios eventually start to try and outdo each other on the sex and violence. And is it having a negative impact on people? It certainly might desensitize them to certain issues of behavior toward the opposite gender.
Yeah.
It may desensitize them to the issue of gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
But again, that instinct for both of those is already embedded in us, or we would not be buying the tickets to these films.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And do we have another caller on the line?
Yes, we do. We have another caller. We have Kathleen in Paris. Aloha, Kathleen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Oh, we lost her. All right. Getting on back. What is your next story then?
Well, it's about earlier attempts by Google to censor. And there is a website, and the webmaster is Max Slavo, and he publishes things that you generally don't get in a lot of other places. It's called the shtfplan.com, and they reported on Google's attempt to sway the presidential election in 2016 by hiding negative articles about Hillary Clinton from those using their search engine, even though those articles were trending. And so this whole issue of censorship is not new to Google, okay?
No, as we were saying earlier in the show, you've got the liberals have seized control of these social media platforms. They can't win an argument or an election with facts and logic.
Right.
All they can do is engage in censorship so that only their point of view is presented to the public, and that's exactly what they're doing. And that means the end of free speech in this country, and it's bordering on dictatorship. Just like over in Israel, where they're getting ready to pass that law that says anybody who documents the IDF's atrocities against the Palestinians goes to jail for 5 years.
They know that they are losing in the court of public opinion and the way they're treating the Palestinians. Something that I thought we needed to bring to our audience attention. There has been a salmonella outbreak in 31 states linked to, drumroll please, Kellogg's Honey Smacks cereal. If you happen to have this at home, take it back to the store. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say most of the outbreaks were in California, Massachusetts, New York, and Pennsylvania. And the recall affects 15.3 ounce packages with the UPS code 38000391103 and the 23 ounce packages with the UPS barcode 38000148110. And they have best use dates from June 14th this year through June 14th next year.
Now, basically, if you're not sure, I'm sure that the supermarkets have been notified.
Yeah.
If you bought your cereal with a membership store where they track what you buy with the computer, you'll probably get a notification.
Yeah.
But if you're not sure, take it back to the managers, and they'll be aware whether or not it's part of the recall. And if it is, Kellogg's going to refund your money or they're going to give you a new product.
Now, I have a thought on this, Mike, that I wanted to raise with our readers and listeners. Forgive me, but isn't the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, supposed to prevent this from happening in the first place with their inspections?
Well,
I mean, come on.
The FDA and the USDA are supposed to, but more and more they allow the food corporations to self-inspect. And the food corporations obviously don't want the bad publicity from one of these outbreaks, so they are doing some inspections, but every once in a while something gets through, and that's just an ugly reality that we have to live with.
I'd like to tool on over to one of the war zones, and that's in Syria. And Syrian President Assad has made the observation that the Lebanese Hezbollah is not leaving Syria yet because their war on terrorism is continuing. And he said it's way far from over, and way too early to discuss the withdrawal of Hezbollah forces from the country. And Hezbollah forces have been of substantial assistance to the Syrian Arab army in battling the jihadist insurgency, which, as we know, is funded, trained, and helped by the USA and Israel. Okay?
Well, see, the issue of Hezbollah being in Syria, Israel is using that as an excuse to conduct military operations against Syria, against the areas where they're accusing Syria of having Hezbollah or Iran. But it is just an excuse. Israel wants to make sure that when this Syrian war is over, that they get to keep the Golan. They do not want to give back all that oil and gas.
Oh, they're making money hand over fist from a conquered Syrian area, which is not Israel. Not at all. And it's interesting to observe that all remaining ISIS resistance zones in Syria are in the U.S.-controlled areas. And that was a statement by the Russian Minister of Defense.
Which dovetails with an announcement that came out today where Assad is getting ready to go on in and get the rest of ISIS out there in these U.S.-controlled zones. And Russia basically said to the U.S., do not oppose the Syrian army when they go after ISIS. And this is very, very serious because if the U.S. steps in and comes to the defense, tries to protect ISIS from the Syrian army, it's going to signal to the rest of the world that, yes, ISIS was in fact working for the United States all along. And if Russia is issuing a warning, the implication is that if the U.S. comes on in to fight against the Syrian army, they might run into Russian forces as well. And obviously, direct military conflict between the U.S. and Russia would be a bad thing.
Absolutely. And I'd like to also pay attention to another war zone about which you will hear nothing on the corporate media. The prostitutes are ignoring this completely. But dozens have been killed as Saudi-led forces have launched Yemen port strikes. Hodeidah is the Yemeni port. And 39...
Hodeidah. It's pronounced Hodeidah.
Hodeidah, okay. At least 39 people were killed in the course of the fighting, and a limited amount of territory has fallen to the invading pro-Saudi forces. Now, most of the casualties, Mike, were among the Houthis and caused by both Saudi and Emirati warships and planes pounding sites being defended by the Houthis.
Now, a couple of things you need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
The Houthis are the government of Yemen.
Yes.
The entire rationale for this is that the Houthis are not the internationally recognized government of Yemen, meaning the United States doesn't like them because they refused to accept the U.S. puppet government that was put in some years back here. Now, obviously, the Houthis are doing very well here, despite all the hardships. It turns out that warship, that United Arab Emirates warship that was hit by these two missiles, I think it was on Wednesday, was in fact destroyed and sank. So, and that probably came as a real surprise to everybody, first of all, that the Houthis have these missiles and that these warships are turning out to be that fragile.
Yep. And apparently the Houthis are struggling to stop the advance of troops heading in from the south, and they have had some success in preventing naval landings from some of the warships. And this is preventing large-scale reinforcements from getting near the city. Now, this is an odd turn of events. And I think as recently as yesterday, the Pentagon said, oh, they were going to be participating in on the attack on this Yemeni port. And now today, they are denying that they are going to be involved in the targeting. Mike, what's caused that turnaround?
I have no idea,
Yeah.
but probably somebody said, no, we can't be seen to be part of this, because it's becoming more and more obvious that this really is a U.S. war against Yemen. The Saudis are merely a proxy.
Yeah.
Whereas the official story is this is just an argument between Saudi Arabia and Yemen.
No.
And it really isn't. Again, as I said, years ago, the United States staged an intervention in Yemen. They overthrew the legitimate government of Yemen. They put in a puppet ruler, same thing they did up in Ukraine. And the people of Yemen decided they did not want to live on foreign puppet rule. They kicked out the puppet rulers, and they basically brought back their own government. And that's what's got the United States very angry, because it gives bad ideas to other conquered puppet-ruled countries, that they could stand up and kick out their puppet rulers. I mean, the U.S. is still reeling from the fact that Iran did that all the way back in 1979.
Mossadegh. And in the last election in Yemen, pop quiz, and for our audience as well, how many names were on the Yemeni ballot? 1.
Yep.
Al-Hadi, that was it. This is supposed to be democracy in the Middle East? Come on, guys. If there's only one choice, there's really no choice. And that's where the problem lies, you know? And on as recently as Tuesday, Pentagon officials confirmed that they were going to provide growing military intelligence and targeting lists for the cities. And they defended this claim by saying it would reduce civilian casualties over just leaving the Saudis and the UAE to their own devices. Hello.
Then why do we have so many civilian casualties?
Yeah.
And if you look up in Syria, it's not like the Pentagon has ever shown a concern for civilian casualties.
No,
Let's be honest.
And I think the analogy I made in covering this yesterday is probably correct. In the film, the one, oh, give me the name.
Which?
The film, the anti-war film, all computer animated.
Avatar.
Avatar, yes. In that film, the general makes the observation that what they want to do is drop a bomb in the memory hole of these people so that they will never again go to the Tree of Souls. They will never again go back to something that had been their homeland. And I think the analogy here is this bombing of the port for the Yemeni people is something that the Pentagon wants to be so thoroughly lodged in their consciousness that they never try to let go of their puppet dictator ever again.
Well, there's another aspect to this, and after we come back from this commercial break,
okay,
I will share that with you.
All right.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to aroutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. Airoutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. Airoutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to Airoutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at Airoutfitting.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
If you are one of the millions of people who get migraines, you need to know about MiGrelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist who created MiGrelief, the patented dietary supplement that addresses nutritional deficiencies in adults and children with migraines. Thousands of physicians and pharmacists recommend MiGrelief.
Call 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about Hodeida and the port. And obviously, from the strategic point of view, what Saudi Arabia, well, what the United States wants to do is to seize control of the port, because that will cut off the Houthis from any access to humanitarian aid. This is all about starving the country of Yemen into submission, which, by the way, is a crime against humanity. And that's the real goal. My question right now is, where is the United Nations? Because it was only a few days ago that the Houthis were supposedly in negotiation with the United Nations to surrender control of the harbor to the UN, which would have taken it off the battlefield, and the UN would have kept it open for all people to use equally, including the humanitarian aid. So, I don't know if somebody arm twisted the UN, or they got bought off or bribed or threatened. But once again, the United Nations is failing in their task of keeping the peace, of trying to tamp all of these things down. So again, nobody's being fooled that this is all about Saudi Arabia. This is what the United States wanted to happen to Yemen, but the U.S. government understands that you, the American people, are just sick of all of these wars. 7 officially acknowledged, according to Bernie Sanders, 76, 18 years of ongoing war. And we're sick and tired of it, and they're nowhere near the end, even though supposedly this was all supposed to be over in 2008. By the way, little story that just popped up. This gets on back to that ship full of refugees that was bouncing around between Italy and France, and apparently was accepted by Spain. And to nobody's great surprise, there are now 70 small ships full of African immigrants sailing towards Spain in the last 24 hours. So you see, Salvini up in Italy was right. If you let the one ship in, the next day there'll be another ship, and the day after that another ship, and the day after that another ship. So this is going to come to a head, and we're going to start seeing these countries defending their borders. What's Brussels going to do? Start invading the member states of the EU, like the American Civil War? Is the United Nations going to declare war on every country that refuses to just allow their own indigenous population to be overwhelmed by these refugees. It really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, there has been talk about an EU army, has there not? Rather recently?
Well, that's an idea between France and Germany,
Right.
Which would actually undermine the need for Europe to be part of NATO, which a lot of people see as kind of a relic from the Cold War.
Yeah.
And rather than being a mutual defense pact, has been turned into the United States attack dog.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the situation is dire. We're coming down here to the end of the show, and I'm hoping nothing will happen over the weekend. I'm hoping nothing will happen, period. But we've got the World Cup underway. That's a potential target. We've got the U.S. Open. A lot of people looking for a lot of distractions from that IG report. Anyway, so there's the music. Time for us to get on out of here and get something useful done. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots to share with you. Please take what you learn here and at whatreallyhappened.com. Share it with your friends. Email, face-to-face conversation. Forget about social media. It is completely useless. Anyway, listen, I got to get out of here. I got someplace I got to go to. So aloha. We'll see you on Monday. Aloha, America.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America?